Hello friends and welcome to the channel. My name is Ryan Abair and today I'm talking about guilt-free living. And feeling guilty is this feeling of something being wrong. In her book, Being Wrong, Adventures in the Margin of Error, Kathryn Schulz takes us on a journey of how being wrong feels like being right. And this sensation of wrongness is only possible with something called hindsight. But if we don't live in the past, we're guilt-free. Stick around and I'm going to unpack this very sticky concept. I don't know how I stumbled across that book I mentioned in the opening of this video, but I'd get my hands on a copy of it as soon as you can because it was life-changing for me. And Kathryn Schulz is some kind of doctor or scientist who studies the phenomenon of being wrong. And when you're wrong, you don't know it. You never do until the event or the statement has passed. Then your brain has a way of rewinding itself and judging it as wrong, or you could be wrong and somebody points it out to you, and as soon as you are aware of it, you become correct. You stand corrected. But if you really think about a mistake, as we call it, you don't recognize it as a mistake in foresight. You recognize it as a mistake in hindsight. And so a lot of us feel guilty because we are rewinding what happened to us over and over and over again and trying to fix the past. And I lived this way forever, for a long time. And the whole story of Lot's wife in the Old Testament, where she turned and looked at Sodom and turned into a pillar of salt, that's an idea of facing the past. And the same story is told in Orpheus, when he's leading Eurydice out of Hades and he looks back at her and loses her. So this theme in spiritual teaching of looking to the past is really the deception of self-improvement. Because in order to improve oneself, one would have to look at the past and try to fix what's already fixed. And if you really get to thinking about it, if being wrong is unknown to me, until I replay the tape in my mind, am I wrong ever? And I think that the answer to that question is no. No one is ever wrong because they don't know it. And Jesus even confessed this of his assailants. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And in many ways, Jesus didn't know what he was doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. In the same way that I don't know where these words are coming from, or what the next one's going to be, or the next one and the next one. That is not to say that I cannot use my hindsight to give better presentations. But as it is now, is as it's always been. And the gift of hindsight is often used as a curse. We often go back in the past and beat ourselves up for what we essentially could not help. And that's what guilt is. It's beating yourself up over what you did not or could not or will never be able to control. So the whole story of Lot's wife looking back and being turned into salt shows you where guilt comes from. The source of guilt is living in the past and trying to fix it. But the past is fixed already. You see? I believe that we as the entity of awareness are slow. We're just slow on the uptake. We can't get in front of reality and improve it. All we are doing is we seemingly are noticing reality slowly and trying to fix what's already happened. That's what guilt is. And so people go to church and they call to mind their sins, which is the trigger for guilt. And every Sunday we pull the trigger. When does redemption or salvation or freedom from guilt stick? Well, it sticks in something called foresight. Looking truly to the future, to the clarity of mind. There's nothing there. Close your eyes and you'll see what the future looks like. It's black. Empty your mind and you'll see what the real future looks like. Clear. So what you put your attention on grows. And most of us are putting our attention on what we did. All you got to do is go into any conversation, including the ones you have, and it's all about the past. In many ways, I'm talking about the past. It's hard to talk about reality because it's unfolding in a mysterious way. Words are also past entities. So you go to a party and you hear people talking about what they did, mostly. And she said, and we did, oh, you should have been there, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, okay, everybody's living in the past and complaining about what happened. It's hard to talk about the present moment because even our so-called conversation about the present moment is too slow. So what you put your attention on grows. Most of us have a recording, a mind saying you should have done, you should be, you shouldn't have done that. You should be more productive. These are replaying, nagging thoughts that tell you nothing about truth, about the real presence of the eternal now. The only way to get clear is to put your attention on those spaces where the mind does not nag you. See, the mind body is going to nag you and nag you and nag you until you realize that's a pseudo-truth. And that truth and dwelling in the silence is what activates something called hope. And hope is an enthusiasm about nothing. I can't put it into words. It's about being in the natural state where the mind stops. You put your attention on those moments where the mind stops, and what you will see is a bubbling of peace, a bubbling of relaxation. It's not explainable. I can't tell you what foresight looks like. Real foresight is just a blank canvas. Why would I get excited about a blank canvas? Well, if you dwell in that blankness, that emptiness, as the Buddha said, or the blown out state, you do find this unexplainable groove or Silence, it's as hard, I can't explain it. And guilt, a guilty conscience is one that likes to reminisce. You reminisce even about the so-called good old days. And even our plans for tomorrow or later, that's a past thing. If I talk about what I'm going to do in a few minutes, I already talked about it. It's already in the past. I don't know what I'm going to do in the next few minutes until I meet that moment. See, that's the thing. You meet reality where it is, and you try to get there soon. You align with it without a running description or commentary of it. It's like watching a football game and the announcers just keep talking about it. They're just talking about what just happened. Why not just watch the game? And maybe cheer or boo. But even those so-called judgments and comments are about what already happened. So there's a state of non-judgment. It's just alertness, suppleness, quietness. And how do you get into that? Again, what you put your attention on grows. You just have to notice when your mind is quiet. You have to notice when your body is clamping down and tensing up. And so this generalized feeling that something is wrong. It could be an ominous thing, like something's up. Or it could be about the past. Oh, I can't fix it. I feel ashamed of it. Either way, it's paranoia. If the finger points out there, it's still pointing this way. You see, there are 3 different traditions that describe something. The Tao in the 34th chapter says, the Tao flows everywhere. And I'm paraphrasing. The Tao flows everywhere. It does all things, but does not create them, and it does not take credit. So the Tao is to the left, to the right. The Tao is everything. The Tao is everywhere. The Tao was born of itself. I'm paraphrasing the 34th chapter. I don't necessarily memorize scripture. In Chronicles it says, this is in the Old Testament. In the Hebrew tradition it says, all things come of thee, and of thine own have we given thee. Now, all things. And Jesus said in a parable about the seed, he said, in some translations it says the earth is a product of itself. In the King James Version, I think it says the earth bringeth forth of itself. The earth bringeth fruit of itself. Something of that nature. So you have to consider all things. Hitler of all things. Sexual abuse of all things. Lying of all things. Stealing, cheating, murdering, torturing, war, pestilence, cancer. All of it. All things come of thee. The Tao is everywhere. You have to think, there's a wonderful NPR program called All Things Considered. You see, we have to get rid of this model that we have in the West, that God does all the good things and the humans do the bad things. Will you explain to me how I can separate good and bad? And how I can separate thee from me when it's all things considered. When you really consider all things from birth to death, to the Big Bang, to the Big Freeze, and everything in between, what's left? All things are all things. You don't have control over it. There's no autonomous me destroying or screwing up God's creation. And he has his palm in his hands, tisk, tisk, tisk me, making me feel guilty. No, guilt is also of thee. And so also this freedom from it, from the past. In Isaiah it says, forget the former things. So in many ways, people think losing their memory might be the worst thing in the world, but I think it might actually be beautiful to not have such an attachment to what we remember. And to really drop that struggle with the past. And this begins with one's attentiveness on a quiet mind and body. You were never really more yourself. And in the Tao it says, in that same verse, it pours itself into its work. I love that. Friends, I'm trying to pour myself into my YouTube channel. I'm trying to completely immerse myself in these words. And when I do, I feel this joy. I feel peace. I have disconnected from my so-called past. I am not judging anything. I'm doing what's pure, joy, holy, whatever you want to call it. And it's open for criticism. But the struggle of guilt is this feeling of two. There's one to blame and one to praise. One is good and one is bad. All things. And the sensation of being wrong is looking back and trying to fix it. We don't realize when we're wrong until someone shows us, and then we use our hindsight. Still, in the moment, you can't catch it. Dwelling in the past will give you that sensation that something is wrong. Noticing when the mind is not bothering you and focusing your attention on those gaps. That's true release. And something I encourage you to experiment with. That's guilt-free living, a quiet mind and body. No story, no identity. No criticizing, no blaming, no judging. Nothing. Pure emptiness. Pure being left alone. How nice. My name is Ryan Hebert. I hope you enjoyed these insights. If you did, please check out my blog. It's called mymorningmotivator.com. I appreciate your attention, and we'll see you next time.